and we send our peace and blessings upon our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, today we're going to continue the series that we started in regards to the family unit. And of course the family unit, problems left, right and center. And the breakdown of the family unit in the last, say, 15, 20, maybe a bit longer, in the last 25 years probably, we're starting to see the effects, and it's extremely scary. And inshallah, we want to speak about the importance of having the family unit, the dynamics of the family unit, the differences that occur, how to manage the differences within the family unit, so that way we can maintain the most important institution for society. Without it, then there's going to be corruption. Without it, then there's going to be fasad, which is evil. And without it, our children are going to lose their ways. And so, inshallah, today's lesson, I'm going to be speaking about the responsibility of the father and the mother. So I've broken it down into 4 parts. The first is raising children begins before they are born. One of us might think that, it's time to raise our children when the mother gives birth. That's not the time you start to raise your children. And the reason being is because the ramifications of your actions pre-birth will continue after birth. It's not going to be like some sort of switch where, okay, now all of a sudden you've changed entirely and you're in father mode. Yeah, there's some elements that you get, but the habits, they continue. They don't change. And so that's what we need to address. And so this is why raising children begins before they are born. First of all, the womb of the mother. It comes from the word rahim, or the word rahim comes from the word rahma, I should say, in the Arabic language. The womb of the mother, rahim, comes from the word rahma, which connotes and gives the impression that there's a lot of mercy that's required during that period where the mother is going through pregnancy. And in that time, the mother, she will experience a lot of things that perhaps she would have never experienced before. And the father needs to be there to support. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ خَشْيَةَ إِمْلَاقٍ نَحْنُ نَرْزُقُهُمْ وَإِيَّاكُمْ إِنَّ قَتْلَهُمْ كَانَ خِطَأً كَبِيرًا. So Allah Azza wa Jalla says, and do not be of those who kill their children. Now the Arabs, they used to kill their children alive. After they were born, they would kill their children. And that was a practice in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala denounced, and that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam also denounced. And also this ayah extends to those who kill their children within the womb. Now a lot of times people ask, oh Allah, I want to do an abortion, I don't feel like I can do this, and the father is not around, it's a broken home, whatever it is. It doesn't mean that there is any grounds for this woman to perform an abortion, right? And so we say no, performing an abortion is only on a very rare case and a very rare circumstance that requires a special fatwa, an individual fatwa for that person. It's no fatwa that's made general to the populace. So anyone who has a severe circumstance such that the life of the mother is in jeopardy, that would be a circumstance that would require a fatwa from the mufti. But otherwise, one should always not fear what's going to come ahead in regards to the social pressures, or even from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions from a financial perspective. And so before birth, one has to have the mindset that my child is not a burden upon me. My child is a blessing upon me. In some areas, when you look at it from a materialistic perspective, it may seem like it is a burden. But from a spiritual perspective, it's not a burden. It gets you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It makes you a better person. It develops your character. And so there's so many goods that come out with children. They are your legacy, and they will continue what you have left in this world. And so your rewards will tick on. And so there's so much good that can come out from a child. And so don't be of those who are afraid of what's going to come ahead. Yes, we might be worried because of the challenging times that come ahead. But we don't want to be of those who become, You've lost hope, right? You've lost hope in bringing children into this world. No, the Prophet ﷺ, he encourages us to bring children into this world. Now during that time when the mother is pregnant, she doesn't obviously perform any abortion or anything like this, but also she is to take care of her body and to take care of the sustenance that she is providing her baby in her womb, because it's rahmah. There's mercy in that, and she needs to show that mercy to her child. So she shouldn't be taking anything that would harm her or harm her child. So the smoking or any drugs or anything like that, this all should stop, right? And this is all before pregnancy. And as we all know, there's been many studies that have occurred. Anyone who has any drug addiction or anything like that, and they continue that through pregnancy, then the baby would also come out with that addiction itself. And so the mother should do her best to always sustain her body with that which is good and that which is halal. And this part now shifts over to the father. The father is required to provide the halal sustenance for his wife and for his child that's in the womb. So he makes sure that his wealth is halal, and he buys from something that is halal, and the meat that he provides is slaughtered correctly, and the food that he gets is all permissible to eat. And so all of this is necessary so we can nurture a child that will come out with blessings and barakah. Can you imagine a child who's growing up in a household that's eating everything haram, and the money that's coming into the household, the sustenance that's coming into the household is all from haram money? There's no barakah. There's no barakah in even providing the sustenance to this child. And so one should also be very cautious and very wary in regards to that matter. Now, the connection between the father and the mother. This is very, very important during pregnancy. The father needs to be there for his wife. She's going to go through some ups and downs, and it's quite difficult. Some women go through some very severe morning sickness. The emotions go up and down. So the father needs to be there. The Prophet ﷺ, he says in a hadith, "Istawsu bin nisa'i khayra." He says, I command you, O men, be very cautious and wary of your women. So when they're in this state, you need to be there for them and support them. Having a supporting father in the household when the mother is pregnant is so much better for the mother and for the child after the birth takes place. I will mention some of the stats that come with that. But the idea is, you've got responsibilities, both of you, man and woman. And when you're doing these responsibilities inside the household, whether you're the man or the woman, you're not doing this responsibility with an expectation that the other person in the relationship, your spouse, is going to come and give you something in return. So there's no expectation. If I am responsible to do something, I am responsible and I will do this firstly because Allah commands me to do this. That's why I do it. Not with an expectation that my wife is going to do X, Y, and Z in return. The moment I have an expectation in my responsibilities is the moment I start to lose the value of my responsibility. And also, the breakdown starts to occur when one person falls short for whatever expectation is required. And that's not why we do what we need to do in a relationship. That's important before pregnancy. I should say during pregnancy, I know we're talking about that, but also before pregnancy. The reason why it's important and you get that down pat very well is because after pregnancy, surprise, surprise, your responsibilities are now tenfold. And all of a sudden, you've got a very chaotic 2-3 weeks ahead of you. And then after that, responsibility after responsibility just doesn't end. Anyone who's got kids will tell you. It just continues and continues and continues. You might, your responsibility might change as the child grows, but it's still there in a different manner, right? And so you need to continue doing your responsibilities, not with an expectation. Why? Because you don't want your child to grow up in an environment where it's tit for tat. I do this, you do that. If you don't do this, I'm not going to do that. No. I want my child to grow up in an environment where I do this because Allah commands me to do this. And this is what we want to do, and this is the environment that we want our kids to be nurtured in. So maintaining a healthy relationship between the spouses is necessary. The father needs to be involved during the pregnancy. So I grabbed a few stats. These stats are gathered from some studies that have been performed in the US. You can scale that out to other Western countries. Of course, to some extent, it also applies to the Muslim community. We're not immune from any of the issues that occur, the social issues that occur in a Western country. So having the father being involved with the mother who is pregnant, so that such that he's not negligent, he doesn't turn away from her, he is always emotionally with her, and whenever she tells him, I feel like eating something. What would you like to eat? Well, I feel like eating a burger. Okay, no problem. You go and get the burger and you come back. I feel like I'm going to vomit. What am I going to do with the burger? You eat it. And so what happens? You end up getting pregnant as well. Right? So you're not going to get annoyed with your wife because khalas, look, they're going to go through this stage. It's quite difficult. It's a very difficult time. And so the benefits are that the wife is less likely to smoke during pregnancy if the father is involved. So which means that she's less likely to go through any stresses. So that way you're going to have a healthier baby. So less likely to, the woman is less likely to fall into postpartum stress, which is after birth, and she goes through a very stressful period. She's less likely to go through postpartum depression if the husband is always with her and supporting her. I'm not saying wallah, he's sitting there مثل العبد serving her day and night. No, but he's always there. Message or phone call, even after work, and he comes and he supports and he's always around. There's a higher marital satisfaction with those who are involved. Those are some of the stats that the study has come out with. Now, the second point that we wanted to mention in today's lesson is that a mother can't do what a father does and vice versa. So the father can't do what a mother does. They both have differing responsibilities. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَالْوَالِدَاتُ يُرْضِعْنَ أَوْلَادَهُنَّ حَوْلَيْنِ كَامِلَيْنِ لِمَنْ أَرَادَ أَن يُتِمَّ الرَّضَاعَةَ وعلى المولود رزقهن وكسوتهن بالمعروف لا تكلف نفس إلا وسعها لا تضار والدة بولدها ولا مولود بولده. To the rest of the verse, it's quite a long verse, but we wanted to take out a few points out of it, inshallah. The first thing that we want to take out is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the time for breastfeeding the child goes for about 2 years for those who want to complete the time that's required to breastfeed the child. And is it necessary to do 2 years? No, it's not necessary. Some people, they can start giving solids to their children a bit earlier, and they might wean them off by 1 year, whatever it is. But the idea is the maximum, where and here in the context is that the father and the mother are divorced. The context of this ayah is that the father and the mother are divorced. And let's just say there's a young child who takes the child, the mother takes the child for 2 years and she breastfeeds. But if she wants to complete the breastfeeding, where the father now needs to pay the mother for taking care of the child for those 2 years, because she's breastfeeding the child. And this is in the case of divorce. So in a case where there is no divorce, right, and the family unit is still together, the mother needs to nurture her child. The first 6 to 9 months are crucial. The baby comes out, and anyone who's witnessed the birth, the skull of the baby is not even formed correctly. So it's not complete yet. Why? Because it needs to be able to contract so it can squeeze out. Otherwise, how is it going to come out? So it needs the head of the baby, literally the skull overlaps itself. So it takes time for the skull to form, which means that the baby, when it comes out, we're all premature, right? When you look at animals and how they give birth to mammals, they give birth to, like, say, a giraffe or a cow or anything like that. Give this giraffe or cow a day or 2 or 3, and it's walking, it's running, khalas, it's moving around. But this baby, we're talking about 6 to 9 months of complete dependence on the mother. Complete dependence. And this is something that the father cannot do. This is something that the mother can do. And this is something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed the responsibility upon the mother. And one needs to understand and recognize the differences in the dynamics when it comes to the family unit. In that time, the mother doesn't want to think about anything except my child, my baby. Because my child, my baby, if I neglect it even for a minute, the baby can die. How many stories have you heard where the baby accidentally passes away simply because the baby may have rolled over and choked itself over some blanket or something? Another one, the mother fell asleep or something like that, and accidentally the baby rolled over onto her skin, blocked the artery, the esophagus, and they couldn't breathe, blocked the throat. And so you hear of these stories that are just accidents, right? And literally within seconds the baby's gonna die. So what's the mother's constant thought? My baby, my baby, my baby, my baby. I need to take care of my baby. And that's very overwhelming. It's very overwhelming. Now the woman is subhanAllah, Allah Azza wa Jalla created her in a way where she can do this. But now here comes the role of the father. You need to support. So when your wife, you're you're expecting to come back home to a nice 5-course meal that she's got you used to, and now she's given birth. Habibi, use your skills to go and make fried eggs and bziyada arosa. That's enough, right? That's all you need right now. Eat whatever you can make. Right now, mother's taking care of baby, especially in the first 2 to 3 weeks. She needs that time, and you need to be there for her. And that means that you need to offload a lot of the duties that she would normally have around the household. When she's able to get up after the whole birth procedure, and of course sometimes some women take a long time, and of course Allah Azza wa Jalla, through His mercy, He's created the nifas, which is the blood that comes out from the woman after birth, and it goes up to 40 days, sometimes 60 days, and that is a rahmah for the woman. Because imagine she's also need to get up and pray and make wudu, and this is a rahmah for the woman, so that way she can focus and take care of the baby. If Allah has given the woman the concession not to pray, give your wife the concession not to cook. Give your wife the concession not to make everything nice and sparkly clean in the house. If Allah gives her the concession not to pray, you also lower your expectations and you support in the household. So the maternal role is all about love, nurture and care, especially in the first 2 years, and we said more so in the first 6 to 9 months. Now I'm going to get to the father's role, but the goal of both parents, and after that stage, right, the baby starts to develop some character, and the baby starts to have a bit of a personality. And the goal of both parents here is to, one, make an environment that nurtures a righteous child. That's the first goal. You want to create an environment that nurtures a righteous child, that comes through the recitation of the Quran, the adhkar that you perform, teaching the children from a very, very young age. It starts even at birth, right? All of these things that you want to do. And you can come up with a list of things. I'm not going to go and just mention 1, 2, 3. I'm sure every one of us can think about them. And the second role is that you want to create an environment for this child to grow up and to tackle the problems that they're going to face in life. You don't want to create an environment where the child gets up or grows up, where they get everything they want in life, and they become whingers and whiners. That's not our goal. Our goal is that we want to, 1, make them righteous, and 2, make them leaders. Leaders in their own right. Not everyone's going to lead the whole ummah, but at least lead in their family, in that unit, that they're going to eventually develop themselves, right? And so that's necessary. So you don't want to create an environment so you can come out with a spoiled child. We don't want this. We want to come out with a child that becomes strong and is able to autonomously operate in the world. So you want to give more and more responsibility to the child as they grow, so now they're no longer dependent on mum and dad. At the beginning, it's necessary that the child becomes dependent on mum. But after that, you need to start to remove that dependence. So long as the child becomes forever dependent on mum or dad, then this child's never going to grow up, even if they're 25 years old. You need to start to give them autonomy, give them responsibility, so they can. So that's the goal for both parents to do. We've spoken about the mother, her role, especially in the first part of the child's life, and it's also extends throughout the child's life. It's always about rahmah and mercy and love and compassion. The father's role is to set boundaries. And the father's role is to do rough and tumble play. And that's something that's necessary also for the development of the child. The child needs to understand that you can get hurt in life. And there's boundaries that one can cross. And they do this with the father. It works a lot better with the father. Usually, it doesn't work as well with mothers. And the reason being is because their role comes from a role of compassion, rahmah, and whatever you like, I'm going to do. It's built that way by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because it's necessary at the first 6 to 9 months, up to 2 years for a child. With the father, no, I'm going to poke you, and you're going to poke me. And me and my child, we're going to start poking each other, and we're going to know when to stop poking each other because now we've crossed the line. That's what we call rough and tumble play. You're going to come and grab the child, you're going to tackle the child, you're going to put them on the ground, you're going to play with them, whatever it is. Child's going to jump on you, you're going to play, whatever it is. Then the child smacks you. Now you teach the child, you've drawn the line. You don't smack when you're doing rough and tumble play. Right? So that leads over to our second point, inshallah, about boundary reinforcement, but I'll come back to that, inshallah. Now, for mothers and for fathers, the process of bringing out the best of the child is that the father needs to encourage the child. You need to have an encouragement, and it happens in different stages and to different levels, according to the development of the child. If the father is not encouraging the child to do something, why would the child think that they can do something? So usually, and this is also another very important role for the father, if the child, let's just say, wants to ride a bike. They've grown up, they're about, say, 2-3 years old. They jump on a bike and they're a bit scared. You put them the training wheels, you encourage them. Dad, I'm with you, I'm your backbone. Just go out there. If you fall, I'll catch you. And if you do fall, it's okay, it's not going to be too dangerous. And so the father sets those environments where the child finds encouragement, and he allows the child to go through some risks that are carefully calculated, such that these risks don't impede the life of the child. It doesn't kill it, doesn't kill this baby, and it also allows the child to grow. So you put these boundaries. You don't take the child, for example, skydiving, too young. You take this child to a local park, and on the footpath you give them their bike, and you show them what to do. And so you give them that encouragement step by step. It's very important for the father to do in regards to the upbringing of the child. Now, in that process where the father wants to encourage the child, there's a very precarious and cautious line that the father must always take into consideration that he does not cross. Because it's very easy for now the father to become judgmental of the child. The father encourages the child, yalla, go and do this, right? The child's not able, he's stuffed up, he fell down, whatever it was, he's just not doing it. So what happens? Father now turns into a judgmental person. You can't do this. You're weak. And starts to label the child. That's a very detrimental way to raise a child, right? Already from a young age, you're killing their self-esteem. You're killing their motivation to do something. And so it's a very precarious line. You need to encourage, but don't become judgmental. Don't label. Don't tell your child, you're useless or anything like that. And so that's very, very important also for the father to take into consideration. Another important concept for the father to take into consideration, especially when there's a new child in the family, is that the father may become jealous. There's two aspects to that, and it does happen. One, that the father can become jealous because of dynamics in the family, and it changes, such that the wife no longer gives the attention to the husband. The story of the hero to zero, right? So the husband who was my Prince Charming and my lovable cousin with the ash, and now he's like, drop kick, get out of my face, I don't want to see you, right? So this dynamic changes, and it's necessary. Again, the wife needs to take care of her children. And so what happens is that sometimes men become jealous. Be careful. Don't vent your jealousy onto your own child, right? So that's something that men need to take into consideration. Another one, another reason why there could be some jealousy is during the latter stages of the development of the child, which is quite cynical for anyone to do this, but it does happen. If you've got faults yourself, and who doesn't? Everyone has faults. And you can see the development of your child overcoming the faults that you've harbored, such that now they've become better than you. So you become jealous. And that's a very, very detrimental way to approach your children as well. One example could be, let's just assume that someone has a deficiency when it comes to being tidy and clean, right? They're not always tidy and clean and putting things back or whatever it was. And the child, subhanAllah, grew up and for some reason they were able to overcome this, for one reason or another. And you can see that in your child, right? And so what happens is the man becomes jealous of the child. And so they do things to provoke that. So they'll move things in the child's room to make things messy or whatever it is. It does happen. It's cynical for anyone to do that, right? I mean, it's your child. You want the best for your child. You want the best version of yourself to come out. So all of your deficiencies are overcome. You should look for your deficiencies, and you should try your best to allow your child to overcome it, such that if a person doesn't know how to read the Quran, they teach their child how to read the Quran. If a person has only memorized 2 or 3 pages of the Quran, they teach their child to memorize more than that, than what they know. And this should be a moment of pride and joy and happiness, because it's your legacy. It shouldn't be a moment of jealousy. Alright, now that we've spoken about the things that the father shouldn't do, now the fathers set standards so their children can become better. So this ideal that they create, they put a standard, they say to the child, you should become like this. And this standard needs to be something that's achievable for the child, so that way you don't become judgmental either. Now, the father's absence in the household is detrimental to the upbringing of a child. A father needs to be in the household. Now, of course, we're trying our best to keep the family unit together. Now, let's bring out some stats, again, back to the research study that I spoke about. Fatherlessness is not good in a household. And such are the stats. It's 4 times greater risk of poverty for the child if a father's not around. More likely to have behavioral problems if the father's not around. 2 times greater risk of infant mortality. More likely to go to prison. More likely to commit crime. 7 times more likely to become pregnant as a teenager. More likely to face abuse and neglect. More likely to abuse drugs and alcohol. 2 times more likely to suffer obesity. And 2 times more likely to drop out of school. And here we're talking about no father figure either. So not just no father, but there's no uncle, no grandfather, no father figure around that would keep the father around. See, one of the miracles of the Prophet ﷺ is that he came out with such good character and his father wasn't around, right? And this is one point that we always stop at in the seerah, and something that everyone subconsciously understands, right? But we never really actually verbalize. It's the fact that his father wasn't around and he was a good person. He went from one household to the other, so it was always disruptive in regards to the father figure that he had. So he went from his grandfather to his uncle. And so he's got this chop and change of the different father figures that he's had, but nevertheless he still came out as a very noble person in his character. And so that's one of the miracles of the Prophet ﷺ, because it's so common, and one would very easily acknowledge that if there's no father around in the household, it's detrimental for the upbringing of the child. So we want the family unit to be together. We want to recognize the differences between the mother and the father, and we don't want some of the aspects in regards to what we said the father shouldn't do, and also we want the father to do the actions that he should do. Now, the things that the mother shouldn't do. So we spoke about the rahmah and the mercy of the mother. That's necessary. But that could also be a detriment to the child. And that's the overprotective mother. And she comes out to her child, I'll never allow anything bad to happen to you. right? And the mother says this to the child, I'll never allow anything bad to happen to you. Yes, you say that when they're 6 months old, but not when they're 5 years old, not when they're 10, certainly when they're 15 or 20. I'll never let anything bad happen to you is a very detrimental way to raise a child. You should be saying, I'm going to raise you so that if anything bad does happen to you, you're able to overcome it. You don't want to create a safe space. You know, the whole safe space business that comes out. Yeah, you know, I'm not a big fan of that, honestly. Create a safe space, go out into the real world, you're back on your knees. How about become a stronger person? How about be able to tackle the challenges of life around you? And that's a better way to approach the matter. So, it's incorrect for the mother to become overprotective. Having an overprotective mother would then be, it won't create an environment for the child to be able to explore and to be able to navigate challenges, and that's required. Now, one other point that I wanted to mention, which perhaps also links to one of the first points that we mentioned at the beginning, is that we want to raise our children in an environment where we obviously they're connected to Allah. But one element that we want them to be connected to, which is very, very important and a characteristic of Allah as well, is that He is the Razzaq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who is, He is the one who sustains. So yes, mum and dad are the one who give us whatever it is, right? If the child wants something, a toy, a food, whatever it is, mum, dad, give me this, give me that. Okay, you want to create that environment for your child such that they appreciate that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who brought this sustenance to them. Say Alhamdulillah, say Bismillah. You know, you get them a toy, say thank you Allah for allowing me to have this toy. Right? Teach them these things. Why? Because one day you're going to die. And you could die at a very young age where your child is still at a very young age. And if they have already instilled in them that Allah is the Razzaq, then automatically their heart is at ease. Right? They don't have the rational faculties so they can say it in words, verbalize what they want to say in regards to understanding that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Razzaq. But in their development, if mum and dad die somewhere along the way, and if you already embedded it in them, it would make their life so much easier as they're growing. They won't start to turn around to people and beg people, and their character starts to change and the development starts to get warped. So we want to embed that concept where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Razzaq. So create that environment for your children. Boundary reinforcement is necessary. That's the third part that I want to speak about. Boundary reinforcement is necessary. Many people believe that giving infinite freedom for the child is the best thing that you can do for the child. Why? Because it nurtures creativity, and you don't want to create any boundaries for them, and you don't want to create all of these unnecessary roadblocks for where they could go. And that's probably the silliest thing that anyone can do. Giving ultimate freedom and the reign is yours to the child is the worst thing that you can do for the development of a child. Learn how to say no to your child. It's necessary. It's a requirement. They need to know that not everything that they want, they will get. Not everything that they want, they will get. If they grow up in an environment with everything they want and they get, how are they going to operate in the world? Everyone knows that in this world, if you want something, doesn't mean you're going to get it. Right? And so you need to say no to your child. That's the first point. Second point, mother and father, both. If you say no, mean it. Don't say no and then cave in. That's also detrimental for the development of the child, because it teaches the child that, hang on a minute, the boundary that mum and dad just put, I can step over it. And believe me, children can do that. And they know how to poke. And they know how to keep, extending that boundary. And they'll try. They'll try. And they'll do it all the time. You might teach your child, for example, at home, here's a random example. I don't know. At home, let's just say there's food on the table, right? You can only eat with the food that is in front of you. And this is the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ. You've got food in front of you, you eat with the food in front of you. If you want something else, you ask. You don't go around and grab from here and grab from there. You ask. So you eat with the food that's in front of you. Then you go over someone's house and they've invited you for dinner, whatever it is, and your child sits next to you, and mashallah, your child is running amok. Because children know they can push boundaries. They've already understood the boundary at home. Now here it's quite similar, the scenario, but it's not exactly the same as home. So they're going to start to try and test, right? And they'll push the boundaries. I say, okay, so you have to teach your child again that no, it's the same rules apply here just as it applies at home. And so you need to say no to your child. And don't be afraid to say no. And when you need to say no, you say no and you mean it. So when you're out in the shops and little Mahmoud is walking around with you, going through the chocolate section. Mom, I want this, Dad, I want that. Okay, you know what, we'll grab one inshallah. You grab one. Oh, Mom, I also want this. No, you can only grab one. But I want this one too, Mom, and then chuck a tantrum. You said no, because there's boundaries, and they need to understand that there's boundaries. They're going to chuck a tantrum. What are you going to do? It's very embarrassing, right? They're going to kick, they're going to fall on the floor, and you're going to sit there red-faced. I don't know the child. Walk away, go to the next aisle, right? So what do? Do you cave in? No, you don't cave in. It's fine. It's a child. Everyone's going to look and stare. Yes, so what? It's a child. Everyone chucks a tantrum. But you've got to teach them. And you do it properly once or twice or 3 times max, and the child won't do it again. Because you're not going to cave in. But if you cave in, guess what? The next time you go to the shopping center and you say no, what's the child going to do? They're going to push the boundary. So you need to reinforce the boundary. If I said no, I mean it. I'm going to acknowledge the way you feel. I understand you're upset. I understand that you're unhappy because I said no. But it's for your own good. And you comfort them. And you acknowledge their emotional state. But you also say no. Maintain your no. Don't give in. And that's also necessary as well, inshallah, for the development of the child. So boundary reinforcement is necessary. The last part that inshallah I'm going to be speaking about is how not to raise a child that people find annoying. So the way to do that is not to bring out the worst of yourself on them. Believe me, children can push your buttons. And for anyone who has emotions, you're going to feel angry, you're going to feel upset, and you're going to feel revengeful at times and insightful, and you just want to let it all out. Anyone who's got kids will tell you, yep, felt that before, right? But don't bring out the worst of yourself on the child. Why? Because if you bring out the worst of yourself on the child, what's that telling the child? It's okay. You can scream. When you're feeling bad or whatever it is, you can scream, go off, swear, go off, no problem. It's all good. Why? Because mom and dad did it. So don't bring out the worst of yourself on the child. That's the first part. Second part is that you don't allow your child to do something that you start to dislike them. So if your child starts to become annoying in one facet or another, whatever they're doing, and you dislike the action that they're doing, stop them from doing it. Don't allow it to slide. Because, chances are, if you dislike it, the next time they go around someone else's house or to someone else's place or someone else sees them and they do that same act, they're also going to dislike the act. But because, everyone's nice and cute around babies, that person is not going to tell the baby, listen, you're not going to do that again or whatever it is. Not going to scold the baby or not going to discipline the baby, right? But if they're doing something that you dislike, someone else is also going to dislike that same action. And so, when someone else dislikes it, the action of your baby now is growing up in an environment, and you let it go, by the way. You're letting it go, and they continue to do this day in, day out, week in, week out. you're now creating an environment where the child is growing up around people who lie to the child because they don't want to be rude, and also they dislike the child. So imagine actually growing up in an environment like that, where everything around you is everyone's just putting a fake facade for this baby to exist, but cannot wait until this baby goes away because they despise the baby. So what do you think is going to happen when it comes to opportunities? It's going to be shut in their face. If they're pleasant to be around and you like them and you teach them and you create that environment where they're likable, then guess what? Ammu Hassan and Ammu Muhammad and Auntie Khadija, and whenever they go over their house or they come over, the opportunities are going to open up. And so what's going to happen is that they're going to have an interaction with an adult. And that adult is going to impart some knowledge onto them. And that adult is going to give them an experience that they perhaps haven't experienced before. Like I give you an example with my nephew some years ago. Beautiful kid, I love him. All right? Very intelligent, mashallah. And he's a good kid. He came over my parents' house and I was there. And he's not like one of those kids where I just don't want him around. No, he's a beautiful kid. I like him. And so what do? I held his hand. I go, let's go to the corner shop. I went to the corner shop. We went for a walk together. Oh, Ammu, what's this? Oh, Ammu, what's that? What's this? What's that? Right? And I sit there. Oh, this is a car. This is a number. What's that? And this. And we have a conversation. And this is a development for the child. Opportunities open up. Because if I didn't like my nephew, you in this walk, man. I'm not going to take you. Right? And so don't let your child do actions where you start to hate them, because chances are other people are going to hate them, and then the opportunities are going to fold in. They're no longer going to be presented to your child, and so that also impedes the development of the child. So these are some pointers, inshallah, in regards to the responsibilities of the father and the mother. So raising a child begins before the child is born. We need to understand the dynamics of the family unit. A mother can't do what a father does, and a father can't do what a mother does. Boundary reinforcement is necessary. So both mothers and fathers, they have a responsibility to create these boundaries around the child, or else they're going to always continue pushing it and they're going to become a menace, and you don't want that. And also raise a child that you like, genuinely. Don't raise a child that you don't like, because chances are other people are not going to like them, which means the opportunities are going to fold in. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us strength in our family units. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow the Muslim community to find strength in our deen. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to raise the next generation upon piousness and righteousness. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us goodness in this world and the next. Jazakumullah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.